What is up, team? Welcome back to the Red Storm Rap Reaction Podcast. I'm Pat Kane, and St. John's fell, unfortunately, in overtime to Marquette today in the Big East tournament to presumably end their season, barring a NIT invite, which is, I don't know, I'd call it unlikely at this point, but who knows? And I promise it might have looked like me and Cole were cheersing there in the opening intro. We were not cheersing, okay? Very upsetting, very disappointing season. Seemed to be the record kept on spinning, and we were just saying over and over again, disappointing loss, disappointing performance. And today, Cole, if I would have told you St. John's had a 10-point lead at one point and they lost a close game that was a possession-by-possession ball game in the last 5 minutes in overtime, would you be surprised, A, and B, would you be able to tell me which game it was?
I would never be surprised by them pissing away lead. Like, that's just status quo at this point. Has Mike Anderson been fired yet? Have we gotten that? Has that happened?
No official word. No
Right.
official word. Our
Nah,
Big East brother in Georgetown put the axe down on Ewing today.
You
so
got
maybe next
to it, but like, was today like deja vu compared to last year and our exit out of the Big East tournament last year? Get up big 17 points against Nova and then just let it all fall apart and lose in a close game. Do the same thing against Marquette, up 14.
Exactly like it. I would say the only difference is this one didn't feel as heartbreaking. For whatever reason, I guess we saw it coming more so than last year. But just exactly the same way it played out. I mean, St. John's played a really good first half. Tonight, they got a 10-point lead going into halftime. They held Marquette to really poor shooting in the first half, close to 30% overall, and 4 for 21 from three. So their defense really came out and was energetic, and they looked like a team that was, playing for their lives in that first half, and they were for the most part. And because of that, they were able to get some success on the defensive end. And the 36 points, while not, overly impressive, is good enough, coupled with good defensive effort to have a good lead going into halftime. But we had a halftime lead against Marquette the first time we played them. Tonight was a different ball game. I would have never thought, even with overtime, that this game was played mostly in the 50s and 60s. If it wasn't for overtime, it wouldn't have got to 70. Would have thought that going in. So a complete opposite in terms of styles is what I was expected. I wasn't surprised St. John's was in it. Of course, getting that 10-point lead and seeing it dwindle the way it did, and unfortunately ending the way it did, was not all that surprising in a season that, in a tenure of Mike Anderson, that had similar results over and over again.
A tenure that's just was like constantly being kicked in the balls watching them play. So that I think you just said it. It was really the tale of two halves. I thought the team played great in the first half. Like you said, they looked like they were playing like their lives depended on it, which their March Madness lives did depend on it. And then to start the second half being up 10, go the first 6 minutes of the second half without a field goal. I think they had 6 turnovers in that time without a field goal. Watch that 10-point lead go to a 2-point deficit. And at that point, it was hard to really be confident that they would be able to come back and take a good, strong hold on that game again. And ultimately, they didn't. Field goal shooting was very porous in the second half. AJ Storr had a tough game, 1 for 11. Posh was 2 for 10. Obviously, you feel for him. I'm not sure if you saw his post-game comments yesterday after the win over Butler, where he mentioned sort of his struggles throughout the season and how he was sort of able to get over them in the last 3 games prior to tonight, and how he said he was kind of just compounding his issues by just constantly thinking how poorly he's been playing all season. And he was able to sort of just like get into the groove of being like, hey, I need to be a leader and need to just hustle and play good defense and have things start there. And then today, unfortunately for him, just reverted back to what has been a bad, poor season for him. 7 points, 1 assist, 3 turnovers, like 22 turnovers for the team. We talked about it a little bit in our Big East tournament preview pod with Dave the other day, but it's amazing the way the stats have reversed, the team stats from season to season with this team, to go from a team that did a really good job at protecting the basketball last year, and then to not do that at all this year. 22 turnovers today. You're not going to beat Marquette, the best team in the Big East.
Sharing the basketball was a really good asset, calling card, if you might even say. Last year, St. John's was close to the top in the country, assist to turnover ratio. And like you said, tonight, not only did we turn it over 11 times in the second half in overtime, we only had 1 assist in that period. So not a great job sharing it, not a great job taking care of the basketball. In fact, we were only 7 for 36 overall from the second half in overtime. So I like to start with the positive. We played pretty well in the first half, but as you can see, we did not carry that in post locker room talk. 2 for 12 from three in the second half in overtime, 11 turnovers, 1 assist. You're not going to be able to sustain any type of lead doing that. St. John's, like you said, that beginning 6 minutes, that 10-point lead evaporated rather quickly, and we've seen runs, be a common occurrence. St. John's had a 15-0 run in that first half. Maybe it's worth noting because many people were like, "Wow, Mike Anderson breaking out new lineups in March." He had the old NY, Traore, King, Posh, Jones lineup. That classic 5-man group that we've seen so often. He had that lineup, and eventually subbed out Traore for Stanley. But those same 5 guys went on they were part of a 15-0 run. I'm not sure if they were in for the entirety of it, but it just goes to show you sometimes things don't go perfectly as planned, and sometimes the wrong group of players can play well, the right group of players can play wrong, vice versa. You could have the right play call and the wrong outcome, the wrong play call and the right outcome, and that's coaching. And that's why it's always so hard for me to come in here and definitively critique a coach, knowing that the variables are so often up in the air. But 4 years is enough of a sample size, I think, to draw a conclusion and to come to a reasonable agreement that maybe going in a different direction is the right decision.
And to your point about the 3 points, the 2 for 12 between the second half and overtime, I know I mentioned Storr having a rough game, 1 for 11 shooting, but I did want to point out the cojones on the kid. They just keep, even in a terrible shooting night, to just keep shooting taking big 3-point attempts. Yeah. The end of that game in a close 1-score game, and he's jacking up threes. Unfortunately, for us, they didn't hit the bottom of the net.
And I said last game, even on these off shooting nights, I want you. You should have a 6 for 22 night once this season. And I say that jokingly because Jones had a 5 for 22 night, and it's another one of those crazy, crazy lopsided makes to misses games from Jones where he's just got no conscience, and not in the good way when he's on. It's whenever the case may be, if he's got the ball, he's looking to put it up. And Storr, like you said, he had an off shooting night. The only shot he made was that bank 3 in the first half. So, really struggled to find the bottom of the net, but he kept working hard. He did have a handful of rebounds. He was hustling and playing defense out there. I thought tonight overall the defense really was good. You mentioned Posh. I tell you, dude, if there was ever a shot that could have, changed the storyline on the season for a kid, it would have been that 3 at the buzzer. I wanted that shot to drop so hard, just so much, not for our own sake, but for his sake, to get a game winner 3, to advance to Friday night semifinals for St. John's, for the coach, for the team. I'm sure, it would have gone a long way, and Posh deserved it. Unfortunately, didn't fall. Unfortunately, that's been, the case when you were in St. John's uniform.
And you can see the emotion on the kid's face and body language after the game. He's such a hard-nosed, tough New York cookie, and we rarely see that type of emotion from him. I think it was Van Maken and one of the other assistants picking him up off the ground because he was so devastated. But I know you and I were texting during the game, and you thought it looked like there was some pretty good action there drawn up to sort of get Wuzu coming off a screen, I think it was, and sort of going towards the basket, kicked out to Posh. And I think it was Jim Jackson pointed out, if that was how it was drawn up, if it was looking for an open 3-pointer, to have your point guard who's shooting 22% from 3-point be the one to take that final shot, even though he is our best player and I would want the ball in his hands. I didn't think a 3 in a 2-point game being shot by Posh was the right call. I'd rather have somebody going to and trying to get fouls. The refs have been blowing the whistle the whole overtime.
The results, I didn't love the shot. I didn't love the initial action. I thought, getting it right back to Wusu with momentum going towards the basket. He had that drive to tie it and at the end of regulation. I'm not sure if the play call was, designed to be a kick out. I thought he was getting in the paint and then looking to finish for himself. That's why when on the replay, I didn't love, Storr was in top of the key, 5 feet beyond the 3-point line, wasn't moving to get to an open spot. I'm not sure if he knew he was just strictly a decoy, but I think, obviously if we knew where the ball would end up, you'd prefer it to be Storr taking that 3-point shot or over Posh. The way the play ended up, maybe it was more happenstance. And, they had Jones, Posh, and Storr all on the perimeter to start the play. So it could have ended up in maybe any of those guys' hands. I'm not going to kill him for the play call. If Wusu gets fouled and makes 2 free throws, everyone's calling him a genius. If he makes a layup, everyone's calling him a genius. If Posh makes that 3, no one's even saying why is it in his hands. You know what I mean? So I think it might be a little bit of Monday morning quarterbacking if you're complaining about it. There were some complaints about not calling a timeout at the end of when was it? Overtime or regulation? I'm getting confused. We got the steal at half court, and then Store took a three. I want to say he missed on the wing, and I didn't think it was a terrible shot. I wasn't confident we'd end up getting it. I think we were tied. In
I think it was
regulation.
the end of regulation where Marquette was shooting free throws, and we had one timeout remaining, and he used the timeout in between the first and second free throw, and Brando was criticizing him as
when you're talking about those free throws, I want to bring up the fact because this is kind of funny because we talked about it the last time how Kolek might be a punk, and I defended Kolek a little bit, but Wusu got them back today, and Jim Jackson brought up he was talking trash on that free throw line. I forget what Marquette player it was, but he was talking trash while he had the ball, like obviously like pointing at him and saying like some stuff. So who knows? It would have been just like totally St. John's justice if I say that jokingly for if Wusu would have got a technical foul for talking shit to free throw line.
And just like you said when I brought up Kolek the other day, that if it was our guy, you would have loved it, and I did love it today when Wusu did it. So
exactly, I told you. But yeah, let's talk more about why we think the second half was so disastrous offensively. I'm not sure if it was 100% Marquette's credit. I will say they came out the second half much more energized, and I'm sure they probably read on the riot act in there, and they realized if you blow this game against St. John's, you can say goodbye to any 1 seed hopes and probably 2 seed definitely as well. So and the 1 seed hopes are pretty slim as is, but anyway, Marquette came out and the defense was better, but still, and this is just, again, an over and over thing we're saying, standing around, watching people pass, watching people, not move, waiting for a shot to go up, waiting for Soriano to get it, and then just chase offensive rebounds. We exert a ton of effort crashing the boards. We exert a ton of effort, Soriano trying to get the ball in the post, but we stand still on offense so much. Like Marquette is a team who has a great offense, but they don't run many set plays, many what you'd call design sets. They have a bunch of action going towards the rim. They set a bunch of ball screens, dribble handoffs. They use their guys as cutters, constant movement, but like there's not too many, what you'd call, sets. And I'm not saying as any disrespect to Marquette. I'm saying St. John's doesn't run many sets, but they also stand around continuously, whereas Marquette might not run sets, but they have purposeful offensive movement. And you could see night and day the difference there in the second half.
Yeah, I know he's not your favorite broadcaster, but I think Tim Brando had a really good line where he hit the nail on the head in the first half when St. John's was going on that big run, that big 15-0 run. He said St. John's is a team that goes on runs, and St. John's is a team that gives up big runs. And Jim Jackson immediately said, and you're not going to beat Marquette playing like that. And coming out of the half after being up 10, and like I mentioned it earlier, like turning the ball over like that, like Marquette is too good of a team, and especially how good of defense they play. Like they're too good of a team for you to be able to be so careless with the ball. If you would have told me going into the game, St. John's is going to turn the ball over 22 times, I said they're not going to win. I wouldn't have even expected to be as close to the game.
Yeah.
I think I was looking at the box score earlier. I think Marquette shot really poorly from three today, didn't they? I think they were 22%, 23%. I mean, some more of those shots fall. This isn't the game that it was. So
they were 9 for 34 from three today, so 27%. This
man is prepared, right on cue.
Not great, but they were 5 for 15 in second half and overtime. So like I said, the second half and overtime was a different story overall on both sides of the court. Credit to Tim Brando. Wow, I guess I'll let that slide, Cole. I didn't think that ever happened on my podcast, but I'll have to take somebody's word from it. Somebody from back in the 80s and 90s. He's got a name recognition to him, and people talk about him. So I'm guessing there was a time when Tim Brando could really hold his own. But this current rendition, it's oh my God! The King family loves him. Kobe King's family loves him. He is all about Kobe King, and every other player who makes a shot for a second, he thinks is Kobe King until he realizes it's not, and he's got to change directions going down the other way of the court. But all right, Tim Brando, we'll give you one.
Out to Cole Latchall and send it to King of Prussia. So.
That one set we were running in the second half for from like the 6 minute point forward was just the horn set, get it to Wusu, high ball screen, him and Soriano, and it was just over and over again. And sadly, it was the most success we had in the second half. I mean, the job of the other three guys was to stand still. Wasu had to get the ball, elbow extended. Sometimes he was catching 3 or 4 feet higher than the 3 point line, though. And then it was just 1-on-2 or 2-on-2, top of the key, standing around. And like as much as I love Wasu, I was just yelling and yelling and yelling, move it, move it, move it. And he made some plays, credit to him. And we could tell by them doing it over and over again, it was by design. But to me, it's a bad implication if your best offensive set is a one or a high ball screen from Wasu over and over and over again with 3 guys standing around. Even if he has some success with it, and even if he's a good enough offensive option to use in some pick and rolls, if that's your go-to and if that's the thing you have most success in, it's just a bad sign for your overall offensive structure.
What did you make of the game that Soriano played today? Another double-double, but I thought at times he looked oddly timid in the paint. He would get balls. It seemed like they were doubling a lot.
Yeah, I think he got beat up a lot as the season went on. Like so many hips and shoulders and bangs inside that paint, over and over again, and so much attention drawn to him. And I think maybe we take for granted what kind of toll that takes on a kid. He did miss a ton of chippies tonight and towards the end of the season, especially just, not so much seemed like focus to me, but I think that's always an easy excuse to make from watching on TV. He's not our problem, obviously, but he did struggle towards the end of the year and in the later Big East games, finishing around the rim, it seems, and like I said, focusing.
So
but I hope he sticks around. He did try to hold the school and the fan base hostage after the game by saying he'll only come back if Coach Anderson is kept as coach. I think that's an admirable stance. I don't think it's I think it's definitely an emotional stance. I'm not sure if it's one that he'll obviously stand by. I don't hate him for saying it, but it's also nothing the school can take into consideration when making this type of decision.
I don't know that he's going to get his wish.
Exactly. And St. John's shouldn't be granting wishes to their players. We can obviously lose with this group of guys, and the decision has to be made for the betterment of the future, not the past. Unfortunately, as harsh as that sounds. And I love this group of kids. I hope they stick around and play.
If Father Shanley dialed up Pat Kane and said, "Pat, I need you to help out. You need you to join up with the board of trustees and be a decision maker for us. What do we do with Mike Anderson? We've got the money to pay his buyout. We just need to know, should he stay or should he go? What are you saying to?"
Well, I say, Father Shanley, I'm sorry I missed Mass these past years. Please forgive me. I think that St. John's would be right in the decision to move on from Mike Anderson. I do think when you're forking over that much money for a buyout, then due diligence has to be done on it. Obviously, you hope it is being done. It should be a shoo-in that it is being done. But with St. John's, who knows that you can replace him with a quality coach that will, generate interest and, some media buzz throughout the offseason. There's an obvious answer to that question. It's not even worth mentioning because everyone knows who I'm talking about. It is completely obvious right there on your fingertips, St. John's. If they were to not get him and go an alternate route, I know you've mentioned Cole, starting with a low major guy who has no experience in this league is a risky proposition. Depending on who that is, I would say it's the good call. There is a few coaches who I would say is definitely not the right decision, but I would lean 100% towards changing directions and making a call someone with the same area code as St. John's and, getting things going. And that's not to say that I don't appreciate the job Mike Anderson did. He just wasn't successful enough for me to, go to bat for him as St. John's coach for another season.
100% agree. And then, so you tell Father Shanley that, and then Father Shanley asks for your top 3 list of the Pat Kane new coach wish list. What are you writing down? We know who 1 is, so you can just give me 2 and 3.
Yep. Number 1 is the obvious one. Number 2, I am going to stick to it. I'm a Chris Mack guy for number 2. I would be more than happy if Chris Mack was the backup plan to number 1. Number 3, I don't know if Pat Kelsey is a considerable candidate. I feel like he is more in line to take a Southern high major job and one up northeast. He would be my pick among the non high major current coaches. If you could just say take anybody, the ones that seem more apt to be in the St. John's conversation. I'm a big Langle guy. I think what he's done is amazing, and I don't care what type of advantages you have in the league. If you win 5 straight conference championships, 5 regular seasons and 4 tournaments, and the one year they didn't win it was the year of COVID. There wasn't a tournament. That's domination. That is complete, steamrolling of the league against your peers, and you got to be doing more than just 1 or 2 things right. So I'd go obvious one guy close by, one of the best coaches of all time. Number 2, Chris Mack, a guy who's had sustained success in this league, young enough to really build something, knows what it takes. And number 3, I'd take a chance on the coach who's dominated the league for half of a decade and really seems to know the ins and the outs of basketball X's and O's and could bring some pleasing to the eye type basketball to New York, which is sorely missed. What about you, Cole? I want to put you on the spot. Okay.
Yeah.
Father Shanley says, "Hey Pat, we like your recommendations, but we're not sure you're the guy to be giving them. Can you go get some secondary references from your friend Cole?" Yeah.
So same Patino, obvious one, and it's one by a mile. Like there's no one even remotely close. I'm right there with you with Chris Mack. I think he kind of got a raw deal at Louisville. Would be doing cartwheels if he was the guy. Number 3, I told you before when we've had conversations that I rely a lot on you for the knowledge on the mid-major guys. I don't have quite as much. I haven't been watching College of Charleston like that much on the. I know you're the degenerate gambler type who's got.
Whoa. First Brando on this. Okay.
On Merrimack plus 3.5. So I will go, and I know he's not a popular pick. Mike Bray, I think, had done it for a while. He slid this past year, but he did it for a while at a high level at Notre Dame. He's proven to be able to recruit. I think his last real recruiting class, obviously he was a lame duck this year, was numbered the 20th recruiting class in the nation for Notre Dame, which, I mean, if you had those type of results at St. John's, you're talking about a whole new level of player than we've had here in quite some time. Okay. And he might not be as solid as an X and O guy. Obviously, Patino is by far. But the thing that really sold me was watching him take shots of Jameson with the college students after his final home game. And
I like that video too. I like that video too. I'm not gonna lie, I did like that video a lot.
I was totally out until I saw him taking shots. I was like, all right, this is it.
I think you're gonna get some backlash from St. John's fans about the whole Mike Bray thing. I will say, I think, Syracuse, Notre Dame, like Syracuse, like Boston College, like Pittsburgh is just a much better geographical fit in the Big East. And especially Mike Bray is a Northeast guy. I think he probably relied on a lot of those connections. And I was going to say him coaching in St. John's might be a way for him to kind of rejuvenate his recruiting chops. But what you just said is true. If he's still had recruiting success these past 4 years, I find that kind of worrisome. I thought it was more that he fell behind recruiting, and that's where the results have waned. But if he's still had some success recruiting and we're seeing these results, maybe he's lost his fastball a little bit. I'm not sure. He did have 25 wins last season. So it's not like, he's had no success recently. He had 25 wins last year. They went to the tournament, won a game. But he's only made the tournament once in the last 6 seasons. From what I gather, you're saying, if it were come down to a mid-major coach who hasn't done anything in the high major level, and we don't get Chris Mack or Patino, you'd feel more confident in putting your faith in a guy who's at least been there before, Mike Bray.
Dude, and just go into my own personal experiences when I was a student at St. John's. So during my undergrad years were the last 4 years of Norm Roberts. And just saying this, so all of our fans listening, our millions and millions of fans who might be a little younger and don't remember what those years were like, you're talking about, and me and Pat are both basketball lifers. Like there's nothing we love more than basketball, and St. John's basketball is at the top of that for us. You couldn't pay me to go to some of those games. You're talking about student sections completely empty. Nobody attended. There was no juice for those Norm Roberts years. And that's always been my biggest fear about potentially going a mid-major route is, do you get a guy who just can't recruit at the Big East level? Do you get a guy who's not able to bring in the level of players that we need? Do you get a guy maybe who's not as skilled or talented X's and O's wise to be able to win games? that's why I've always been, go a more established route, because I'm terrified of that alternative. And that's not the right, like, a decision maker. And I'm not paid the big bucks to be, Mike Craig.
No.
The person making those decisions should never have that fear. But that's what
Well,
I'm afraid to see for this program that I love so much. I don't want us to
it's
go back.
it's a rightful fear, and it's one worthy of happening. I will say, I just want to stop and say congratulations to Norm Roberts, who got a big win today against Huggy Bear, stepping in for Coach Self. Hopefully, Bill Self's all right. But it must have been, weird for Huggy to look down the sidelines and see Norm Roberts coaching a team that was clearly better than his. That never occurred to him once when it was the Big East days when they were on the court. But yeah, and that is a tough memories to look back on. I think the Big East landscape is a little different now. Not so many. It's not as big once, obviously, and it doesn't have those behemoth programs like Louisville and Syracuse at the top of their game, where you had to really recruit 5-stars and you could get like drowned out. Where a team that wasn't recruiting well, like St. John's, was really noticeably behind in the talent department. I feel like this era of Big East, you can kind of piece together teams in a different way and not have mega talent and still compete. Kind of what Holtman did at Butler. Butler comes to mind. But then, also to contradict myself, these last two coaches that Xavier and Butler fired were kind of that route of going the low major guy and hoping they could find the right coach instead of a big name. And it didn't work for them. So, and then they went out and hired Mata and Miller, and Miller's had this huge success. So St. John's, I think, should follow their approach this most recent time. And like you said, go with choice one or choice two, and we know who those guys should be.
To counter, what you just said, who's been the cream of the crop for the last decade in the Big East? It's been Villanova, and Jay Wright was recruiting those 4- and 5-star kids, even if
Sure.
the rest of the population of the Big East wasn't. He was still getting those high major kids, and then was able to translate that to just winning Big East title after Big East title after Big East title.
You definitely want the recruits. I didn't want to mean to imply, like, obviously you wanted the best recruit possible. I just think in the current Big East, you could more easily compete from a talent standpoint than you could when there was those 16 teams in Pitt and Louisville and Syracuse were really humming along. But yeah, Big East done. Let's look at the box score quick before we got here. I just want to, I'd like to say again, I know we went at the coaching talk. I want to make sure everybody knows, we appreciate the season that just happened from the kids' standpoint. They deserve some credit, some admiration for the effort they put in. Obviously, we're rooting for wins. We know it doesn't always end up that way. I would love it for these guys to come back and wear St. John's jerseys next year. I think there is a lot of untapped potential. I'm a huge Wusu guy, and I was just thinking today, like, I don't want this guy to leave St. John's. I don't care who the next coach is, him and Posh. I think they can find success here in New York, and they put a lot of work so far wearing that St. John's uniform. I'd like to see them you finish it off, no matter who the coach is.
And they are New Yorkers. Like, you don't want to
Exactly.
Posh transfer to Miami or somewhere like that and leave New York. He's a New York kid. Like,
I think Marquette might want Wusu after these 3 performances he's had against them. He might pull David Jones and go to an interconference squad. But here's the box score. Not as much green as we'd like to see. Wusu led us with 16 points. Well, him and Jones each had 16. Wusu on 11 shots, Jones on 22 shots. So that tells you a little bit about their efficiency right there. Soriano with another double-double adds to his season total. Really impressive season out of him. 8 for 10 from the free throw line, but only 2 for 8 from the field. Yeah, like you said, Cole struggled around the rim tonight. Couple that with Posh's 2 for 10. AJ Storrs 1 for 11, and it's easy to see how St. John's was only 21 for 69 overall. Not a great shooting night. 9 assists to only 22 turnovers, and the offense was not something you're going to write many, stories about. Not going to use it for many offensive exhibitions.
And we talked about before, like, statistical averages, like Marquette shooting so poorly from 3. I mean, we were on the season, a 69% free throw shooting team. We shot 20 for 24.
Sub 70. Yeah.
If we shot our average from the free throw line, like, we get blown out. So.
Yeah. I mean, if you looked at the first half stats, you can see how we shot better than them from the field, from 3. We out-rebounded them big time. We didn't let them go to the free throw line. And then in the second half, all those things kind of flip-flopped. Their field goal percentage skyrocketed past ours. We went all the way down to 30%. Their three-point percentage wasn't great, but they still hit more than us for the game, 5 in the second half. And then from not going to the free throw line at all in the first half, letting them go 12 times. And the story is how it is. Unfortunately, St. John's loses another one and ends the season too soon once again. But
What did you,
guys,
what did you say? What did you say our shooting percentage was in the second half and overtime?
In second half and overtime, we shot 19% overall, 7 for 36 from the field. That's not going to get it done. Not going to get it done at all. All right. Well, guys, thank you for listening to the season. I will continue to put out some episodes. Obviously, we'll track whatever happens early on in this off season, and then check in from time to time. I hope you guys appreciate all the work Cole's put in for me, and continue to see him on here from time to time, or maybe even more often. Who knows? I know he's a busy guy, but I do appreciate everybody for listening and tuning in. Like and subscribe, following along, leave your comments. For Dwight Hardy, this has been Pat Kane. That's Cole Atshaw, the Red Storm Rapid Reaction Podcast. Peace.